public officials who create that culture of bribery and pay to play, if you will, that is so poisonous to city government.
We are joined now by U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuaid and Robert Foley. Thank you both for coming in and talking about this case. I mean, it's a historic day, a sad day, of course, in the city of Detroit. Barbara, let's start with you. This has been a long haul. You guys have been investigating this case since 2004, yet it all came down today.
Today, is a day that I like to say is not about the past, though, even though this investigation spanned all those years. But I think it's about the future, because I think through this jury, this community has spoken that we're not going to stand for this kind of government in our community. And I hope that it will deter candidates in the future who seek public office from committing these kinds of crimes.
Now, Robert Foley, you were the FBI special agent in charge of this case. Why was it so important to tackle something like this? And how did you get that first piece of evidence that made you launch into this investigation?
Well, back in 2004, and just actually prior to that, information would come in from informants, from contractors who perhaps didn't win a contract because it went to somebody that was willing to pay to play, or through anonymous letters and information from folks that worked within the City Hall. So looking at a scheme so broad and so pervasive, it was important for us to make sure that we followed it through to the end so that we got to the result that needed to be reached, and so that we arrived at justice.
Obviously, the jury did hang on a couple of different counts. Do you have, looking back, do you have any regrets? Were certain things too complicated, do you think, for them, or do you think they just could not come to agreement?
It's hard to know what goes on in the mind of a juror. We were constantly battling internally between wanting to be thorough and make sure the jury had enough evidence to make their decisions, but also trying to streamline the case. How much is too much and is overwhelming? And so we made our best decision about how much evidence we should give them, and they did their best with it. So, we're very gratified for their hard work, and we accept their verdict.
Now, either one of you can answer this question. A lot of people are happy that today happened and all of these convictions came down. Some not so happy, or some may be asking, why not go after the people who took the bribes, people who benefited and got millions and millions of dollars by sort of paying to play with Kwame Kilpatrick, Bobby Ferguson?
So with respect to the bribe payers, certainly it takes two to play, the bribe receiver, the public official, and the business person who's paying that bribe. Where we had sufficient evidence that the bribe payer committed a crime and had willful intent, we did prosecute those people. There were 4 bribe payers who were prosecuted and actually testified at the trial as cooperating witnesses. But others, are part of that vast spectrum, and we make an assessment of were they a criminal or were they a victim in this case, and how's a jury going to perceive that, because they certainly were extorted and pressured. And so we try to make an assessment of where that person fits on the spectrum when we decide how to treat them.
Mr. Foley, a lot of people are going, this day is over, but are there other people to go after at this point? Are there more investigations to come, or perhaps ongoing right now?
There are other investigations that we're looking into, and of course we feel that same sense of relief because I think that the city of Detroit feels that sense of relief.
Can you both talk a little bit about how much time and energy has gone into this? I mean, Robert Beckman, the lead case agent, 10 years investigating. Your prosecutors, Mr. Chucko, Mr. Bellata, also a decade into this. I mean, this was a huge commitment. And why is it so important to make that kind of commitment for something like this?
Well, considering the vastness of the enterprise, the investigation required attorneys, it required accountants, it required countless and countless of hours of the investigative team, as well as the prosecutors who put the case together, all of which is aimed at achieving the result so that the city of Detroit can receive the honest services that it deserves.
Barbara, I have a question for you because, of course, during our earlier newscast, we were talking to former FBI executive Dan Roberts, who said a lot weighed on your career with this case. I mean, you've got to feel proud, maybe not celebrating, but this has been a long time coming, and it seems you did everything right and then got the right result today. I mean, is this a day to feel proud about your career and where you are and what you've done with this case?
Well, it's not about my career, but I am proud of the work that was done in this case by the agents and the prosecutors who worked really tirelessly. I can't tell you how many nights, weekends, holidays they missed away from their families. They don't get any overtime pay for the work that they do in this case. So I'm so grateful to them and proud of them for the work that they've done on behalf of our city.
And another question, you both talked about how this is we can look forward to the future and a brighter day in the city of Detroit. Do you think when other young politicians perhaps want to run for office, they'll think twice and may think one of you or someone else might be tapping them on their shoulder and looking to make sure they follow the rules?
Well, I sure hope so, because that's exactly why we do a case like this, to deter people in the future. You know, when you look at this case, 35 defendants prosecuted and convicted to date in the Kilpatrick administration. I think there are a lot of good people who went to work for him with all the best of intentions. But that corruption is like poison. When you see everybody around you getting a little piece of the action, you start to wonder, where's my piece of the pie? And so that poison permeates. I think when people realize that that is not acceptable in the city of Detroit, it'll attract good people to run for public office.
So the culture of corruption has now ended.
Yes, and I also want to point out that this is in the past, the Kilpatrick administration. The Bing administration is very helpful and honorable.
Barbara McQuaid, Robert Foley, thank you both for joining us today.